Hello, Kingdom Speak listeners. Today we have a special guest on the podcast. He's a young fella with an interesting story about the Apostle Paul holding the rope. Welcome to Kingdom Speak with Pastor Daniel McKillop.
Elder, I can remember when we first had you come up for that men's retreat that we did.
Yeah.
And I had some of my guys come up to me afterwards when they seen you walk in. They said they were like, "Oh man, here we go. We're just gonna have to listen to this old man."
You put up with it.
Yeah. And Elder, I don't think you were 10 minutes in until they were all like rolling on the grass, laughing. And ever since then, they've been throwing songbooks at me, wanting me to get you to come back.
Yeah. Well, they hadn't thrown enough.
They haven't thrown enough.
I went down to a church in Louisiana, and after I got through preaching, the old guy come out and said, I got to apologize to you. I said, why? He said, when you walked in, I said, not another old man. Well, that encourages me.
Yes.
So
really was
85. Yeah, I think it's about half over for me.
You say you're 85?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you're about halfway there, I'd say.
I'd say half over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, man. Elder, we've been praying for you during this
I
season
appreciate
with
it, buddy.
the loss of your wife, man.
Y'all be nice to your wife every day, because when she's gone,
Wow.
it's a trip, boy. You talk about just waves of it it hits on you every day.
How many years were you married?
63.
Wow.
Man, that's a long time.
63 years.
Wow.
But, as much as I miss her, as bad as this whole world's getting, I wouldn't call her back.
Boy, isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
It'd be nice to talk to her and let her give us a little insight, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah. That's something. Heaven is something. Everyone seems to know what's in heaven but me. I don't have a clue what's going to go on.
Wow.
I don't have a clue. I just all I know is going to be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to be there.
Yeah. The book of Revelation, everybody understands it but me.
Well, do you know what? You got company. There'd be two of us now.
Well, be two of us.
Yeah.
No, I don't get it. I just know God's got it worked out.
He sure does. He sure does. Man, Elder, do you remember us doing doing that meeting together in North Dakota out at Brother Starr's?
Oh, Brother Starr, yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, we done that meeting together, and you had talked about one afternoon you taught on, I don't know exactly what you called it, but the value of a rope handler, I believe, maybe, or the worth of a rope handler. Man, that was an incredible lesson.
Well, thank you. The brother mentioned it to me the other day, and I went back and found some notes on it. I didn't remember if I had preached it there or not, but I broke out a few notes on it just to basically, what it was about was, are we on?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Y'all are too casual with this thing.
Yeah, we are.
No, I like that. I like that. Well, what the whole thing about it was, when they let Paul down, the Bible says that his enemies were watching the compound and from every corner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they apparently must have had some, I imagine it would be like trees or shrubbery in the back or something. And those guys put him they was going to get him, they was determined they'd get him. And they put him in a basket and tied a rope to the basket.
Yeah.
And he just said they were disciples.
Yes.
They wasn't big shots. They didn't have $1,000 shoes and a $25,000 suit waiting at the airport.
Yeah.
They were just disciples, and they lowered him down. And everything that he did from then on, everything was because those guys held that rope.
Wow.
And I called it holding the rope.
Yes.
So when people cut the grass, they're
Yeah.
holding the rope.
Yeah.
And no matter what they do to keep the church going, they're no name people, but they're holding the rope.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Everything. I think I remember you saying that. And I guess it so impacted me because every letter that he wrote, every church that he started and impacted, it was all in that basket.
It's all because when he went to Mars Hill and talked to him about, I see that you've got the inscription to the unknown God. I'm going to declare him to because of the rope holders back there. Wow. And he was educated, highly educated.
Sure. And
they may not have been. They probably were not.
Sure.
I kind of was reminded of what old comedian Jared Clowers telling about that old federal man came out to the man's farm and he thought there was some wetland. He's hunting some wetland and he said, I'm going on your farm. I have permission by the papers in my pocket to go on to the farm. He said, I wouldn't go if I was you. And he said, well, I'm going anyway. He said, well, I wouldn't go, but you go if you got to go. And he got out there and that bull, that bull started running at him and he run back and just scooped under the fence, just barely. He said, why didn't you tell me that? He said, I just thought you'd show him your papers. So Paul wouldn't have, his sitting at the feet of Gamaliel wouldn't have done much for him.
Boy.
If those guys had got a hold of him.
Wow. Wow.
It takes all kinds, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what it is. You think about your conferences that you have. If it wasn't for people getting in there for weeks and cleaning and you feed the preachers and they cook and they get it all ready and they serve
Absolutely.
it. As they say in Louisiana, that's what makes the mare trot.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All those are aspects of ministry that if we're not careful, we just relegate ministry to the pulpit. And we fail to realize all these other aspects that make the mare trot.
Yeah. Well, what does it all take to get a man to come to the pulpit,
Wow, boy, that's good. Yeah.
It's a lot more detail than some of us want to fool with, I can tell you that. And then all the things that people do airlines,
Yeah.
clothing stores, on and on and on.
Yeah. It's never a one-man show, is it?
No, sir. No, sir. It's not a one-man show. Well, what was that old thing that's been said over and over, but it's still a good saying? It said, the preacher told the man, said, boy, God has blessed you with this garden. He said, you ought to have seen this garden when God had it by himself.
Well, there.
Absolutely.
Helping God out a bit, right? Yeah.
He wasn't trying to take God out of it, but trying to let him know it. People have to do some work too.
That's exactly right.
God's got it all arranged for us. That's what Calvary was about.
Wow.
So we could become his hands, his feet, and his voice.
Wow. Absolutely. And how do you cultivate that in a church, Elder?
Well, you know, some people are never going to catch on, but I think it's more caught than taught. And I think we need to, I don't know, I think if everybody's working on the building, the preacher ought to work on it too a little bit.
For sure. Absolutely.
You know, and it kind of it shows it's leadership, you know. But I always tell people at church, I said, if there's a piece of, somebody's dropped the gum paper on the floor, you pick it up. Don't wait for somebody to come sweep it next week. You pick it up. It's your church. It's right. God's church. You're totally responsible for it. If nobody has cut the grass, get your lawnmower out and throw it on the back of a trailer or truck or something, and go cut it.
Yes.
Because there may be some reason why somebody else didn't get to it. You just don't want people to come in and it not be done. If the grass is high, nobody's going to come to your church. I don't care how bright your sign is.
That's right.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Wow.
Don't let me do all talking.
What was I heard a guy say one time, if I drove, he would talk.
If what?
That if I drove, he would talk.
Oh, you drive, I'll talk.
Yeah.
But you see, I was, like the old saying, I was vaccinated with a record player needle.
That's so good.
That's awesome. Vaccinated with a record player needle. Wow. This is Elder, this is really the nitty-gritties of what makes a church, isn't it? I've said this before about speaking at the funeral of an elderly saint who you knew prayed for you. I mean, I knew that they prayed for me every day. And they're not high maintenance. They weren't after the limelight. And when I buried them, I've referenced this numerous times at funerals. Who's going to replace them? You know, when I step to the pulpit and preach, and God graces a man with his anointing, all of those are components behind the scenes that makes that a reality. And this concept of rope holders is really where it's at, isn't it?
Yes, sir. you see, whenever Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Thessalonians, Colossians, Hebrews, when those guys read those letters, did they just kind of close their eyes and thank the Lord for being a part of it, or
Yeah, the guys that held the rope.
They said,
Yeah,
Paul said he went to the third heaven. Well, he rode a basket all the way to Mars Hill. he rode a basket all the way out of that Philippian jail.
Wow.
He rode a basket all the way to the third heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And were those, we don't know who those guys really were. I mean, it was just a generic disciples. That was it.
That's what they were, just disciples. Disciples. No, they don't have. I've looked in all the Bible. They don't have. There's no books by them.
No.
They don't say nothing about the rope holders' names. Just not part of it.
Wow.
So I don't know.
Wow.
They probably, some of them lived across the track.
Boy, isn't that the truth?
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, a lot of those guys probably would never have been invited to preach a conference or.
Well, I probably was one preacher.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They weren't preachers. They just, they're what makes up the church. I tell you what, I've preached to empty church before. It's not very much fun. Preached to my wife and my daughter when I started the church in Dallas. And there was a lady finally moved in from Arkansas, and her and her son. And man, I had a big crowd.
Wow. Doubled your congregation.
She wasn't a preacher, not the daughter of a preacher. But I can tell you one thing, she did a lot for the church.
Wow.
And she, for those people that knew how to get in and invite, knew how to cook for the church and make peanut brittle and everything else. Most of our church, a lot of our churches that these people are trying to tear down and take away all the doctrine and standards and everything else, they were built on the backs of these rope holders.
Oh, wow. Yes, sir.
Boy, I say when people do that, they better know what they're doing. It's a lot easier to tear a building down than it is building. I had a man in my church that demolished, or whatever you call it, these buildings downtown, big skyscraper, and I saw him. He had it so the explosives in it, so he took me around in it before it went down and showed me where all the explosives were. And he had it fixed to where it caved in on itself.
Yeah.
And so then back off, and I watched that building come down. Boy, it folded like an accordion. It just folded down in on itself. Imploded, I believe is what they called it.
Sure. Yeah.
And if we're not careful, we can go to a church that's been established forever and ever, and people worked hard and gave their life savings for it and everything else, and they can implode something that's been there 80 years. They can implode it in one or two or three statements one Sunday morning.
Wow.
Aye.
Wow.
Was I not supposed to talk about that?
No, sir.
No,
Keep talking about that.
We love it.
You know, you've been to our church, elder, and
Yeah.
blessed us. But I'm the recipient of
Yes.
a stable church that
Hard
is
work.
multi-generational. And
Yes, sir.
I'll say it probably not as often as I should, but I try to say it frequently.
Yes, sir.
We're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yes, sir.
And
Well-
for today's topic of a bunch of rope holders as well.
Yeah. You're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. Church when I was there, it looked so good, and they worshiped like we're used to people worshiping.
Yes, sir.
And you're doing a good job. Just all we got to do is just keep going, and everyone has a sacrifice to make, and nothing comes easy.
Yes, sir.
Nobody can give you a burden-free church.
Very
The
true.
burdens come with it. They come with it.
Do you think, and I know this may be leading a little bit off topic, but this is good. Do you think that some of the motivation by my generation coming into a church like that, do you think some of the motivation for moving that, changing it, is just they get weary with the fight and they think that if they move the line, they won't have to fight as much?
Well, they probably are tired of the. I thought you were through. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm sure that. I would hate to have to start pastoring a church right now in this day and time, because of the mood and the attitude and what's out there.
Sure.
But we don't have any choice.
No, absolutely.
You don't have any conviction. Now, that's another thing that some are saying, don't have to have anointing. Well,
Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Wow.
You don't
Talk
have to
about
have
that.
anointing. Well, it's because if you don't have holiness standards, if you don't have prayer like
sir.
it ought to be, if you don't have the living right to go with it, you just come and just start jumping before God ever does anything, you don't have any conviction.
Wow.
So someone said not long ago, said, boy, I felt something tonight. Well, whoop-de-doo. Wasn't you supposed to feel something the night before?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But, I was in a camp meeting one time where they were jumping and the music was blowing and the platform was actually rattling under your feet.
Yeah.
And it was vibrating. And someone after it's over, a younger person said, boy, wasn't that a great service? I said, I don't know. I didn't feel nothing, but
Wow.
it was good music. I told him, I said, it was real good music.
Wow.
I'm
Oh,
getting
Lord,
off
help
in-
us.
I'm getting in left field.
Oh, that's where we need to
Because
be.
I don't want to sound like that. I don't want jumping. I don't want
Sure.
extensive noise, and I don't want it quiet.
Sure.
They asked me one day in a church they said, we're going to have old folks service and we want you to preach it. Well, naturally, I was the only candidate there with license. And I went out there. Whew, I tell you what, I was never so glad to get back to some young people. That was the deadest thing I got into in a long time. So it all works out if we'll just do it right.
Yeah, but I guess if we could tag back into that, volume is not the presence of God either.
Say that one more time.
Volume is not the presence of God. Back to your statement about, the stage was shaken, but you really didn't feel anything.
Oh, I see what you said. I couldn't understand that one word. Yes, that's right. That's right.
I don't.
Sometimes God screams.
Yeah.
And sometimes he whispers.
Woo.
And sometimes he just brushes by us.
Wow.
And we got to be available for that. We got to be, we need to be, sometimes we need to be there with our hands lifted.
Yeah.
But people are coming in nowadays and they just start jumping.
Every time, right.
Yeah. And when I'm preaching, I want people to say amen. I want them to holler, I want them to act like they kind of like it a little bit. It encourages me.
Sure.
But if I have to preach it down, that's okay too.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So then, really, if we're going to be Spirit-led, we almost have to be able to match the mood that God is in.
That's right. You see, God was there when we got there. God can't leave and go anywhere because he's already there.
Yeah. Right.
And so he's there before we get there, and he's got it all prepared. Mm-hmm. All we got to do is walk into it. Right.
So if we can't feel God, it's not God's fault.
Well, that's exactly right. It's not his fault. There may be times that he wants us to have to work for it.
Sure.
But
sure.
It's there.
Right. But having this understanding, and this really does come full circle and tie back into what we started about with rope holders. I don't care if it's musicians, ushers, sound men, everybody's got to be working together to get this thing right.
That's exactly right. Now, what if there had been a slip knot in that rope?
Well,
see, they tied that knot where the hole fall all the way down there. It must have been a tall building.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he had to go down. And if there'd have been some slip knots, just half done stuff. And they had to hold it. They had to know what they're doing. It was no windlass. There was no pulley.
Wow.
They just lowered him down there. And what I'm also saying here is there is no slick way to do it.
Very good.
Wow.
We're not going to pull off the best way in the world to have a revival is people witnessing to other people.
Right.
You could have it. You could have it on TV. You could have it on anything you wanted to have it. But the rope holders are the ones, let's face it, that gets the people in. That's the one that brings them in. They prays with them and lives in such a way that on the job they may make fun of them. They may purposely curse in front of them, but one day something happens and they need prayer requests, and they come say, "Hey, would you mind when you get to church this weekend pray for me?"
God.
That's what brings people in.
Lifestyle evangelism.
Yes, sir. That's right.
So, and I'm picking this up as you're talking, Elder. The other thing that they would have to have is, we don't know how many, but we know there was more than one involved with it, disciples, plural. So they also had to be able to work together.
What if those rope holders had gotten a fight?
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
I can tell you a quick illustration of it. I was preaching in a church to where there was two rows of people came in and sat down, and the preacher said, every one of those are workers here, and they work for the city and have big jobs. He said, if I could get them, I'd have this town. And whenever I got through preaching, every one of them came to the altar and was crying and praying. And the people didn't come up to help them at the altar. They were back in the back, and they were talking loud and stuff. I couldn't get nobody to pray. And so the pastor told me after it was over, said, you know, we had a contest who would bring the red birds or the bluebirds. And the redbirds and bluebirds was fighting over who invited these people, because they wanted to get credit for who invited these people. Okay, there's a lot. Finally, they got up. They didn't know how to pray. Finally, they got up and left. Well, here's the thing about it. The sad part about it, I believe it was Reader's Digest. I can't remember what it was, but it told about this town, and their kids were committing suicide.
Okay.
And they sent someone down to check why it was these particular kids, because these were kids. All these kids that were committing suicide were kids of the city workers.
Wow.
Look what we missed over having a slip knot.
Wow.
Oof. My.
Wow. So I'm not going to show up if my kid's not singing the solo in the choir.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
One man backslid. One, I believe his brother Kenny go there and told me about a couple backslid, and he had just been to a family reunion that Saturday before I got there on Sunday. And he said there was 88 people there in that family, and none of them knew anything about church.
Wow.
And there was all stemmed from that couple that backslid. Now tell me about that. Boy,
God.
rope holders.
You know, I mentioned this to our church a few weeks ago, but we have got ladies in our church that keep track of if there's folks in the town that have been through something tragic, a time of loss, someone in their families passed away, etc. Yeah. And they help us keep in touch with these people.
Oh.
And I have had more people reach out and say, thank you, Pastor, for that card, or thank you for that note. And really it's the rope holders that are making it happen.
That's exactly right.
It's the rope holders that are getting it done.
And you know, I think some people, some saints in the churches get it in their minds that the pastor will bring a revival, and the pastor will do this, and the pastor will do it, because he's so visible and he has to do so much,
right?
And so forth. But they need to wait. No, the pastor. If you're waiting for the pastor to bring a revival, you're probably never going to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't do it. Impossible. He can go to the hospitals and visit and pray for the sick, and he meets people and all, but he's just one person.
Exactly. Wow. So Paul would have never made it without those rope holders, would he?
That's exactly right. He wouldn't have. It just wouldn't have happened. And the time is coming when we're going to have to revert back to these things come on about prayer and fasting. because the internet is not going to do it.
Right.
It's just not going to.
Right. We've had to have, even over these past 15, 16 months, especially here, and I know it's affected some throughout America as well, but we've had to be creative with having church throughout restrictions and
Yes.
use whatever means necessary. But really, there's nothing that replaces that analog handshake and hug around the neck and
I have found out after the thing was over and we started back. I stayed off a year, and of course, part of it was my wife was sick. But I have found out that every church that I have been to, that I have visited before, every church is better off now than it was then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone. The worship is better.
Yeah.
The personality. A church has to have personality.
Mm-hmm.
They can laugh more, they can praise more and cry more. And I think it's because they realize what could be taken from them.
Oh, yes. Yes.
It must be what it is. And I have mentioned that to several, and they said, yes, that is right.
Yeah.
There's a difference in our churches now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our church is better by far. We've grown through it, and not just numerically, but like you're saying, just
That's right.
the depth of the church. It's grown.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So the only thing that hasn't worked out is we got to get that border open so that you can come visit us again.
You got to get one?
We got to get that border open so you can come visit us again.
Yeah, boy, I tell you what, are they going to open that border?
We need a rope holder to come get that basket over the wall.
Yeah. I hate to fly so bad.
Yeah.
But I would. But I'll tell you, boy, that flying has got to be difficult.
Yes.
But Brother Booker this morning he called me. He was in New Orleans trying to find a way to put get his rented car up. It just made me want to go back to sleep. I hate to fool with that stuff.
Boy, it is. It's a mess, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a mess out there.
How long you been on the road, Elder? How many years?
Whew, I don't know. I've always traveled with my ministry. I've always traveled. Of course, when I pastored, I stayed home most of the time. But then 18 years, I was teaching at the Bible College in Indianapolis. And I traveled every weekend just about there. And then, I don't know how long I've been gone, probably almost 15 years I've been on the road. I'm not preaching but 6 nights this week.
Only 6.
Oh, you're slowing down then.
Oh, yeah, they let me off.
Well, I'm glad that you just decided to fill up some of that slack time that you had with talking to us today.
Yeah, I got up to do this, and I guess I got the time wrong, or either they've changed the time in the whole world or something. But I wasn't ready. I'm sorry about not having my necktie. I was headed out to buy earphones. I thought maybe I might need earphones. I was going to go to Walmart and buy earphones. I thought I had all kind of time. Y'all got me. See, I didn't get to bed till 1 o'clock about last night, and it's different times on here. Y'all got me. Fact is, I hadn't had breakfast.
Oh man,
Oh Lord.
Yeah,
man,
so
you need a rope holder to drop you some
God bless
sunny
America.
side up eggs and a little bit of bacon.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. Well, man, Elder, we certainly enjoy you being on with us today, and we listen.
Oh, yeah.
I listen to those scattered shots or scattered thoughts.
Yeah, scattered thoughts. I started out on that thing, or going to call it that, but there was somebody else had that scattered shots
Yes.
on verbal, and he had so many thousands, they would have never found me if they had looked for it.
Sure.
So I had to change it.
Yeah.
But if you were complimenting that program, you go ahead and do that, because I can live 6 months on one compliment.
Did you hear Matt Tuttle? Was you at Little Rock camp meeting?
I think I did. I did hear him. I was just kind of being crazy there. my ears, if there's a lot of sound going, and they were backing him up and screaming and hollering, and which I'm not saying anything against that, but he had it going.
Yeah.
But it was hard to understand. But what I got was good.
Yeah. Well, he mentioned you just saying about a compliment. You could live 6 months. Did you hear him talk about the guy in his church that said, I got something good I wanted to tell you or give you a compliment on, but I didn't want you to get the big head.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
He said, you go ahead and give it to me. The I don't know if you said the devil or there's enough other people here that will help keep my head small.
Yeah, they'll knock it. There's be enough old wet sacks around, they can beat you down with it. Yeah, don't ever. I tell you what, a preacher just one night staying all night in a hospital with somebody that's screaming and hollering and dying. You could never pay that. People don't understand. One man asked me one time, said, what does preachers actually do in the daytime? I knew what he meant.
Yeah.
So I said, eat fried chicken and drink Kool-Aid.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know you try to explain it because
you wouldn't believe it anyway.
No, and just one person you see going astray and knowing that you can't help. And you think of it every time you wake up. You think of it the minute you wake up in the morning, and think of it all day. People don't realize.
No, they don't.
Realize.
No, they don't.
No,
The heart of a shepherd.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Man, Elder, do you have anything you'd like to leave with us on the way out? Just for us younger preachers, the church, anything?
No, not actually. But we just got to, we just got to walk in the fear of God.
Wow.
And we just got to walk the way God is going, follow Him.
Yeah.
And realize that the road is narrow; it's not broad. If you're on a Broadway, if you got room to carry everything you want to carry and have every thought you want to have, you better look where it's leading to.
Woo. Wow.
But if you realize it's just better to be on this narrow way.
Wow.
You can't carry near as much stuff.
Right.
But the end of it is life. That's where we want to go.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
And I don't know as much as I sound like I do.
Oh.
I want you to know that.
Wow.
I didn't mean to sound like it may sound like, because y'all asking me questions, but I don't. Well, we're all just trying to make it. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's exactly right.
Amen to that.
Well,
we're just all trying to make it. That's why you have this program.
Exactly.
You're not doing it for yourself.
No.
You have it to try to help someone. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm sure that it does.
I can
There's
tell
a
you
rope
this.
holder. I'm looking at a rope holder right there. Got that mic right there.
Yeah,
Whatever.
for sure.
He's a rope holder.
That's exactly right.
Of course, I'm sure he's got a good retirement worked out for this job.
I tell you what, Elder, from the perspective of this, I still like to clump myself in the younger generation. I'm losing my grasp on that title, but I still. But man, every opportunity we get to talk to an elder, I want to make sure and tell them, thank you for the trail that you have blazed and the battles that you have fought, so that it's made it easier for us coming behind. You kept the lines clear.
Well, I thank you for that, and I thank you for all the older preachers, and for you. Everyone is nice to me. The young kids and young preachers, they're just totally respectful to me. I get all of the grace from them, and I appreciate it very much. But I tell you what, you people your age and all, you got to realize that an apprentice, a carpenter, he's an apprentice. He goes to work, is apprenticed, and then he gets to be maybe a journeyman or whatever it is. And finally, one day he gets to be a carpenter, and he can build a skyscraper. And I think you've already reached that level that you're far from being a novice or anything like that. You've got your credentials, and you know some things. You may ask the questions, but you've found out some answers too. And I know you know it.
Well, again, it's because of voices like yours that have poured into us, so we're grateful for it. We're grateful.
Thank you, sir.
Well, you need to go eat some breakfast, I guess.
If y'all don't mind, I'd like to have some breakfast.
This has been pretty good.
For calling.
Hey,
the biggest surprise I got was I could get back on, and
it was some work, but we got it.
Instructions come hard for me. Like I told you, I could take a turning plow and tear it completely up and put it back together, but one of these phones is kind of a foreign object in my hand.